A single mother took her sick son to the emergency room. A billionaire suddenly appeared and said, "The boy is related to me." Maya, a poor single mother, a child raising a child with a heart disease, suddenly discovers that her son is put on the hospital's priority list thanks to the special talent from a hidden secret rate. From that moment, the secrets hidden for 7 years gradually come to light, and Maya has to face a truth that can change the lives of mother and son. Before starting, please leave a comment to let us know where you are watching the video. And when it ends, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Hope you enjoy the story to the fullest. Leo, a 7-year-old boy with bright eyes and a clear voice, was curled up on the sofa, coughing intermittently. His heart disease had made him weaker than his peers. The dry cough coming from the old sofa made the small room even more stuffy. Maya Collins placed a cup of hot tea on the table, gently pulling the thin blanket over her son's thin shoulders. "Leo, would you like some more warm water?" Her voice was gentle but full of worry. The 7-year-old boy looked up, his clear blue eyes shining with familiar mischief despite his pale lips. "If you finish this cup, I'll sing you a song, okay?" Maya smiled gently. "I like bargaining with you like this." But she nodded anyway, pouring more water into the cup with Leo's beloved superhero. Outside, the first snow of the season was falling lightly, covering the roof of the old row of houses in a thin layer. The crackling of the cheap electric heater made their struggle all the more obvious. Maya sighed as her eyes scanned the paper taped to the refrigerator, a list of unpaid bills and Leo's follow-up appointment. Antibiotics and cough syrup had eaten up most of her paycheck this month, and if the doctor suggested more tests, she really didn't know what to do. "You'll be okay, right?" Leo asked, squeezing his mother's hand. Maya leaned down and kissed his forehead, trying to hide the hesitation in her eyes. "Of course. You're the strongest boy I know." The answer was so familiar that Maya herself couldn't remember how many times she'd repeated it. But tonight, as she heard Leo's wheezing and coughing, an unusual worry rose in her, deeper and more intense than usual. She stood up, walked to the window, and looked down at the quiet, yellow-lit street. Boston was always cold in the winter, but Maya had never felt so alone. At that moment, Leo's cough became more severe, lasting so long that his face turned red. Maya ran over in a panic, patting his back, her heart pounding. Without thinking much, she put on her coat, picked Leo up, and quickly called a taxi to the hospital. She had prepared herself for a long night of waiting in the crowded emergency room. But when she arrived, the medical staff saw the name Leo Collins on the registration form, and their attitude suddenly changed. "Please come this way. We have given priority to the baby." Maya's eyes widened, thinking they had made a mistake. "Priority? But we don't have premium insurance." The nurse smiled politely. "There is no mistake, ma'am. The baby's profile is already on the Pierce Care Fund's sponsorship list. Haven't you been informed?" Maya was stunned. The name was so unfamiliar, yet it suddenly appeared in connection with her son. An indescribable feeling crept into her heart, both hope and anxiety, as if some door was about to open, bringing with it secrets she was not prepared to face. Maya quietly followed the nurse, still in turmoil. They led her and her mother through the crowded hallway, leaving behind the impatient patients. The door opened, revealing a clean, modernly equipped room. "Room 12 is ready for the baby." The nurse smiled as if everything had been prearranged. Maya frowned. Ready for the baby? How did they know Leo would come today? Leo sat on the hospital bed, his innocent eyes scanning the brightly lit room. "Mom, this place is much nicer than the usual clinic." Maya forced a smile, her heart filled with doubt. Everything was going so smoothly, unlike the previous times when she had to wait in line for hours. It felt more and more like an invisible hand was arranging everything. In the room, a middle-aged doctor with a calm demeanor walked in, introducing himself as Dr. Grant. He bent down to Leo's eye level, his voice soft. "Hello, Leo. The doctor is going to check your throat and lungs. It will only take a few minutes." Grant leaned down, using the stethoscope to gently press against the child's chest, speaking reassuringly as he did so. "Yes, still wheezing like the last time he had bronchitis. And remember to avoid penicillin. Leo had a severe allergy when he was 3. Maya was stunned. She had never said anything, let alone given him his medical records. "Wait," she interrupted, her voice tense. "Where did you get that information? I never reported it to this hospital." Dr. Grant paused, his eyes unreadable. "We have a special linked record system. That way we can prepare in advance for patients who need assistance." Maya was even more confused. A linked record system? Who had the authority to allow them to access her child's information? At that moment, the door opened. A man in a gray suit walked in his mid-40s, tall and thin, wearing thin-rimmed glasses. He nodded slightly to Dr. Grant and then turned his gaze to Maya. "Excuse me, Miss Collins," he said in a polite but somewhat serious tone. "I have something to discuss with you in private, if you may permit me." Maya was wary. "Who are you? Why do you want to see me?" The man cleared his throat. "This is quite private, and it has something to do with your son, so I was hoping—" Her son? Leo? Maya frowned in thought for a moment, then looked down at Leo with concern. "Mom will be right back." With that, she stood up and followed him out into the hallway. Leo was still lying on the bed, reassured by the doctor's warm voice. Outside, the space was quieter. The man handed her a business card. Edward Hale, assistant to the Pierce Care Foundation. "Miss Collins, please don't worry too much," he said, a small smile flickering across his face. "Little Leo is already on our medical assistance. The entire cost will be covered by the foundation. This is just the beginning of ensuring his long-term health." Maya looked down at the business card, her heart pounding. In addition to Edward Hale's name, below it was a bold line: Pierce Global Foundation, Jonathan Pierce, President. That was the name of a billionaire. In that moment, Maya felt as if she had been pulled into a vortex of secrecy from which she could not turn. Maya clutched the business card in her hand, her mind racing with questions. "Can you elaborate?" Her voice was low but firm. "Why is my son involved with a charity I've never heard of?" Edward remained calm, his eyes behind his glasses gleaming with caution. "What I can share now is limited to this. Leo was put on the support list directly by President Jonathan Pierce himself. He has personal reasons for this concern." Maya tightened her grip on her bag, her heart pounding. "Personal reasons? I don't know him at all." Edward bowed slightly as if he had anticipated that reaction. "You don't have to believe it right now, but I hope you consider an invitation to meet President Pierce in person. He will explain everything. We will arrange everything according to the most convenient schedule for you and Leo." Maya clenched the business card in her hand, her voice cold. "Mr. Hale, I really can't. I don't know Mr. Pierce, and I don't want my son to get involved with a stranger." She paused for a moment and continued, "I am grateful for today's help, but I will find a way to repay it. I have never, and am not used to, accepting unsolicited favors from others." Edward tilted his head, his smile still there, but his eyes sharpening, as if he had anticipated this reaction from her. "Miss Collins," he said slowly, "if you refuse, I think Mr. Pierce will come to see you himself, and then, I'm afraid things will get even more awkward. He never leaves a matter unfinished." Maya frowned, her chest tightening with anger and confusion. "Who is he to decide what happens to me and my mother?" Edward lowered his voice slightly, as if making a final concession. "It's not a right, it's a responsibility. Mr. Pierce just wants Leo to get the best care. At the mansion, we have our own team of doctors on duty around the clock, a fully equipped medical facility that's no worse than a hospital, and—" He paused, his eyes quickly glancing at the half-closed door. "There's also a vintage Steinway piano, the kind that's rare. I hear Leo loves music?" A moment of silence. Before Maya could reply, the door to the room made a soft click. Leo's little head popped out, his eyes sparkling, his cheeks still red from fever. "A real piano, Mom. The big one. Shiny black, with lots of black and white keys." Maya was startled. Her heart clenched. The boy was rarely excited when he was sick, but now his eyes seemed to light up the hallway. Edward smiled politely, nodding slightly at the boy, as if he had successfully planted a seed in the child's heart. "Can I try playing Mom?" The boy's voice trembled slightly with anticipation. Maya tightened her grip on her bag strap. Since birth, Leo had suffered too many disadvantages: no father, poor health, a childhood associated with medicine and secondhand toys. The piano had been a luxury dream that she never dared promise her son. Edward stood still, not pressing any further, as if he knew that if he just let this silence pass, Maya would push herself to make a decision. Finally, she took a deep breath and said quietly but clearly, "Okay, but just this once. I want to be there with you, and if anything makes me feel uncomfortable, we'll leave." Edward's face relaxed, his polite smile returning. "Of course, your safety and comfort are our top priority." In that moment, Maya knew that with this nod, another door had opened, and there was no turning back. The shiny black sedan stopped quietly in front of the hospital. Maya hesitated for a moment when Edward opened the back door, bowing politely to invite the mother and son. Leo sat down on the soft leather seat, his eyes wide with surprise. The boy turned around repeatedly, his hands sliding along the delicate stitching. "Mom, this seat is even more comfortable than my bed." Maya pursed her lips, not answering. In her heart, a feeling of unease still swirled. She looked out the window, the familiar scenery of the city gradually receding behind her. When the car turned into the West Hill area, where only the wealthiest families in Portland lived, the silence in the car became heavier. The massive mansions were hidden behind high fences and electronic gates, each garden lamp designed like a work of art. Leo pressed his cheek against the glass, exclaiming, "This place is like a castle in a movie." "Do princesses live here too, Mom?" Maya squeezed her son's hand gently, trying to keep her voice calm. "No, son. This is where people with a lot of money live." The car drove deeper into the area. The paved road was clean. Both sides were planted with shady old cypress trees. Finally, it stopped in front of a simple but majestic iron gate, the bronze plaque on the pillar engraved with two words, "Pierce Estate." The car stopped under the stone arch where the soft yellow light fell on the marble steps. The driver quickly opened the door. Edward stepped out first, then turned back, signaling Maya and Leo to come. Maya held her son's hand tightly, her heart filled with caution. "It's just a house," she told herself, but each step made her heart pound. Leo was different. As soon as he stepped out, he tilted his head back to look at the intricately carved wooden door, his eyes sparkling. "Mommy, what a big door, and it must be as tall as all three of our houses combined." A middle-aged woman with neatly tied silver hair and a gentle face was already waiting for them. She wore a simple but formal uniform, her hands clasped in front of her stomach. "Welcome to Pierce Estate. I'm Mrs. Helen, the housekeeper." As soon as she stepped through the threshold, Maya was almost overwhelmed. Inside, it was not the ostentatious splendor she had imagined, but a luxurious yet cozy space. High ceilings hung with soft-lit crystal chandeliers, bookshelves reaching to the ceiling, interspersed with a few ancient statues. "Mom, there's even a spiral staircase like in a fairy tale," Leo exclaimed, but then coughed softly, his face flushed with fever. Mrs. Helen immediately stepped forward. "The boy looks tired. We've prepared a room for him upstairs, and the family doctor will be here to check him out shortly. Miss Collins can rest assured. All the medical equipment is ready here." Maya hesitated for a moment, but Leo's weak grip on her hand made her nod. "Go up and rest for a while. I'll be close by." Leo reluctantly nodded, his eyes still shining as he heard Mrs. Helen whisper, "There's also a beautiful piano in the room. If you want, you can try it after you rest." The smile that appeared on Leo's lips made Maya both bitter and wavering. As the boy was led up the stairs, Maya turned to see Edward still standing there, but no longer the only guide. At the end of the hallway, a young man appeared, in his early 30s, tall, with sharp eyes, but also a certain tiredness. He wore a simple black suit, not ostentatious, but the aura he exuded made Maya immediately recognize him. This was Jonathan Pierce. "Miss Collins," he said in a low, clear, confident voice, "we need to talk." Jonathan Pierce walked ahead, his stride firm. Maya followed, her hand clutching the strap of her bag, her heart filled with wariness. The crimson carpet led to a dark, intricately carved wooden door. He pushed the door open, motioning for her to enter. "Please, Miss Collins." Maya stopped in the doorway. The large study room appeared. The walls were covered with books, a few antique maps hung between them. In front of the floor-to-ceiling windows that opened onto a view of the glittering city of Boston below, a large walnut table took center stage. Jonathan walked in first, resting his hands on the armrest of a leather armchair. He turned, his eyes meeting Maya's. "You may sit." But Maya remained standing. She folded her arms across her chest, her voice sharp. "I want to know, Allure, why do you know so much about Leo? And why is my son on the Pierce Care Fund list?" There was a moment of silence. Jonathan kept his gaze steady, then slowly replied, "Because Leo is not just an ordinary patient. He is directly related to me." Maya was stunned, her heart pounding. "What are you talking about? I have never met you, and we have no relationship." Jonathan walked around the table, keeping enough distance so as not to put too much pressure on him. His voice was low and restrained. "Do you remember the Boston Fertility Clinic 8 years ago?" Maya was shaken. Memories flooded back. The cold appointments, the anonymous donor number she had chosen after many nights of hesitation. She clenched her hands. "Don't tell me." Jonathan nodded slightly, his eyes sharp but slightly tired. "That's right. I was a donor there, and Leo could very well be the child carrying my blood." Maya took a step back, breathing heavily. "No, it's completely anonymous. I chose a digital file, no name. You can't—" Jonathan interrupted, his voice still calm but weighty. "Anonymous to you, yes. But the clinic still has the records. When I contacted to update the medical records a few years ago, they mentioned a successful case. The information matched perfectly." Maya was stunned, her back hitting the door frame as if she wanted to escape. "You have been following me and my mother all this time?" Jonathan's eyes darkened slightly, but he shook his head. "I never entered your private life. I just kept my distance. But when I received information about Leo's repeated illness, I couldn't sit still any longer." Maya choked, both angry and confused. "So what do you want from us today?" Jonathan paused, lowered his eyes for a moment, then looked up, his voice slow but firm. "It's not about wanting anything. It's about responsibility. If Leo really has my blood, then I have an obligation to make sure he gets the best care. No strings attached." Maya was silent, but her chest was pounding. In his determined eyes, she saw both the determination of a billionaire and a hidden emptiness that was hard to explain. Before she could react, there was a light knock on the door. Helen appeared, her voice gentle. "Sorry to interrupt, but little Leo is asking for his mother." The words were like a string that pulled Maya out of the vortex of conversation. She tightened the strap of her bag, turned around to leave. Jonathan spoke again, his deep voice echoing behind her. "Miss Collins, this is no coincidence, and we will have to talk about many things." Maya walked away, but in her heart there was an undeniable truth. This door that had just opened would change the lives of mother and daughter forever. Maya returned to the guest room. Leo was lying on the large bed covered with a pure white blanket, his cheeks flushed with fever, but his clear eyes still sparkling. In the corner of the room, the shiny black Steinway piano stood tall like a sweet promise. "Mommy, can I try playing?" Leo whispered, his voice hoarse but full of excitement. Maya choked. For years, the boy had only had the old keyboard she had bought from a second-hand store. Facing the real piano, her son's eyes lit up as if he had forgotten his illness. "Okay, but only for a few minutes," she replied, gently stroking his hair. Leo sat down on the chair, his small hands trembling on the keys. A clear sound echoed throughout the room. Maya stood beside him, listening and feeling her chest tighten, because of her son's little dream and because of the uneasiness that was gripping her. Outside the door, Maya noticed the shadow of a man quietly observing, Jonathan Pierce. He stood up straight, his hand resting lightly on the door, his blue eyes lingering on Leo's immature notes. When the music stopped, he entered. "Your son plays very well." His voice was warm but tired, as if it came from the bottom of his chest. Maya turned around, her eyes alert. "How long have you been listening?" Jonathan smiled faintly, shaking his head. "Long enough to see that the boy has the heart of an artist." The words shocked Maya. "Heart," she repeated, her voice hoarse. He was silent for a moment, then gently signaled for Leo to rest. Then Jonathan led Maya to the small room opposite. The door closed, leaving a tense silence. "Miss Collins," he began, his voice slow. "Maybe this sounds like I'm begging for mercy, but I still hope you can understand." Jonathan said slowly, 7 years ago, I was just a 25-year-old boy. My sister was seriously ill, and our family was so poor that we couldn't afford treatment. I did everything I could, worked myself to the bone, sold my blood, and finally donated sperm to earn some extra money. It wasn't a noble choice. It was just desperation." He paused, his eyes darkening slightly. "I didn't know who would accept it. Everything was anonymous. I thought I would never see the results of that decision again." Maya fell silent. Memories of the clinic came flooding back. The numbered file, no name, no face, just dry lines about health and intelligence. Jonathan continued, his voice trembling slightly. "A few years ago, when I had money and power, I started looking for the old files, and I knew. There was a child born from that donor, Leo Collins." Maya's heart clenched. She blurted out, "You investigated us." Jonathan shook his head. "I just wanted to make sure the child lived. I knew Leo was weak. I knew his heart wasn't strong. And from that moment, I understood that maybe fate forced me to do something." Maya gritted her teeth, choking. "So today, what do you really want? To take my child away from me?" "No." Jonathan replied immediately, his eyes sharp but filled with pain. "What I want is to give him the chance to live that my sister never had." He took a step closer, his voice low. "I worked myself to the point of exhaustion to build this empire. My body collapsed faster than I thought. The doctors said I didn't have much time left, but my heart was still strong enough to save Leo." Maya was stunned, took a step back, her hands gripping the edge of the chair. You're saying you'll donate your heart to Leo?" Jonathan nodded without hesitation. There was no longer the coldness of a billionaire in his eyes, only determination mixed with an unconcealable fragility. Maya blurted out, her voice breaking, "But then you'll die. Do you understand that?" There was a moment of silence. Jonathan took a slow breath, then replied, his voice frighteningly calm. "Maya, even if I don't donate, I won't live much longer. The disease is deep-seated. I've been fighting for years, and now my body can't take it anymore." He gently placed his hand on his chest, where the tired beat echoed like a drum. "The only difference is, instead of letting this heart die uselessly inside me, it can continue to beat in your son's chest, in Leo." Maya clenched her hands, tears welling up, her heart aching. She choked. "You? Why did you choose this way? Why did you throw away your own life for a child you never raised?" Jonathan looked straight at her, his eyes determined but hiding a deep fatigue. "Because it's not just a stranger's child. It's my child. And because I have nothing more precious to give." Maya walked out of the study, her eyes still red. The door closed behind her, leaving Jonathan in the dark, and she returned to Leo's room. The room was warm and bright, the smell of new wood mixed with the faint scent of antibiotics. Leo sat upright in front of the Steinway piano, his short legs dangling off the chair. He used his tiny hands to tap each key, the sound echoing out of rhythm but clear. "Mommy, listen!" Leo exclaimed, his face bright, his cheeks still red from fever. "This is Twinkle, Twinkle, but I play it my way." Maya forced a smile, stepping closer. She sat down next to him, watching his tiny hands tremble on the keys. Each note was like a tear into her heart. An innocent child, unaware that his heart was counting down the days. "Do you like this piano?" Maya asked softly, her voice faltering. Leo nodded vigorously, his eyes sparkling. "I wish I could play forever, Mommy. When I grow up, I will be a musician. I will write songs for you." Maya's innocent words made her chest ache. She turned away, trying to hide the tears that were about to fall. "I can do it, Leo," she whispered, kissing her soft, warm hair. "I will definitely do it." Leo leaned his head on his mother's shoulder, his eyes half closed, his lips still moving to sing along to the hesitant melody from the piano keys. Maya hugged that small body, her heart torn by a storm. If she agreed, her son could live, but in return, it would be the death of a man who had just entered their lives. If she refused, Leo would continue to live in weary waiting, with a weak heart that the doctor had said could stop at any moment. Outside in the hallway, footsteps echoed softly. Maya glanced through the half-closed door. Jonathan's silhouette appeared in the yellow light. He did not enter, just stood there silently watching the mother and son, his blue eyes following as if wanting to record every moment. In that moment, Maya understood. This choice was no longer a distant matter. It was right before her eyes. She hugged her son tighter, her heart trembling as if it was about to burst. How could a mother decide to let her son live through the death of a father he had never called out? The open kitchen was brightly lit with yellow lights. The smell of toasted bread and melted cheese filled the air. There was no lavish banquet, no elaborate dishes like Maya would have imagined in a billionaire's home. On the large wooden table, Martha, the silver-haired housekeeper, had prepared homemade pizza, green salad, and a pot of steaming chicken soup. Leo exclaimed with delight as soon as he saw the hot pizza. "Mommy, there's even long-string cheese!" So, Maya chuckled softly. For the first time all day, that smile wasn't forced. She helped her son pull a slice of pizza, the shiny string cheese stretched like a guitar string, making Leo's eyes widen in delight. Jonathan sat opposite, his hands neatly placed on the table. His eyes quietly followed the scene of mother and son together, and for the first time since they met, his face softened. "The boy has such simple tastes," he commented softly, as if to start a conversation. Leo quickly replied, his voice clear, "Pizza is the best food in the world, but if there is a piano, I will want to sing after eating." Jonathan laughed, leaning over. "Then after dinner, I will sing for us, as dessert." "Really?" Leo's eyes lit up. Maya looked at Jonathan, slightly worried that he would talk too much, but he just smiled, a rare and genuine smile. "Actually, I want to hear it too." The atmosphere around the table gradually became lighter. Leo kept talking about school, about teachers, about his favorite songs. Jonathan listened patiently, occasionally asking a few questions that surprised Maya. Not a polite nod, but genuine concern. "Do you want to be a musician?" Jonathan asked. "Yes." Leo nodded vigorously, then hesitated. "But my heart gets tired easily. I'm afraid I don't have enough strength." The room suddenly became quiet. Maya quickly interjected, patting her son's head. "It's okay. You just need to do what you love. I'll take care of the rest." Leo smiled, continuing to eat deliciously as if he had never said that sentence. But in Jonathan's eyes, the blue light dimmed. He gently turned the glass of water in his hand, softly replying, "That's right, Leo. You just need to live your dream. The rest, let the adults take care of it." Maya caught that look. Her heart ached. It was a brief moment, but she understood. The sentence just now was not an empty promise. It was a determination. The room was filled with the sound of spoons and forks, Leo's giggles as Martha brought more ice cream for dessert. For a moment, the scene looked like a normal family: the silent father, the worried mother, and the innocent child. Maya glanced around, her hands unconsciously clasped together in her lap. Was this the first, and maybe the last, time they sat together as a real family? Leo was escorted back to his room by Martha, his stomach full and eyes drooping after 2 more ice creams. Before leaving, he turned back and waved at Jonathan. "I'll sing for you tomorrow." Jonathan just smiled and nodded slightly. His eyes followed the small figure disappearing up the stairs, then turned to Maya. "Come with me for a bit," he said, his voice low but gentle. They stepped out onto the back porch. The Boston night sky was covered in a thin layer of snow, the city lights shining like a sea of stars. The space was so quiet that only the wind and breathing could be heard. Maya crossed her arms over her chest, her voice tense. "You can't expect me to make a decision right away. Your offer is too much." Jonathan nodded slightly, his eyes calmer than in the study. "I'm not forcing you, Maya. Think about it slowly. This isn't an easy choice, and I understand that better than anyone." He paused, then continued slowly. "But I have a wish. Please let Leo stay here, at least for a while. Let me take care of him. Let him grow up. Let him be by my side as a father, while I still have the strength." Maya froze, her heart pounding. "What are you talking about? Stay here, in this mansion? I can't—" "Not to replace you," Jonathan interrupted, his voice firm but gentle. "I know. You raised Leo all by yourself, and you don't need anyone to interfere. I just want to be there. Take him to school in the morning, listen to him play the piano, read him a story the night before he goes to bed." His voice choked. "That's all. Because I know. I won't have this chance for much longer." Maya turned her face away, her eyes brimming with tears. That plea didn't sound like a powerful billionaire, but like a tired man, desperately grasping for his last days. "Mr. Pierce." Her voice trembled. "If you leave, what will happen to Leo? He won't understand. Why a father who just entered the world disappears?" Jonathan closed his eyes slightly, taking a deep breath. When he opened them again, his blue eyes shone with a strange determination. "I think this identity. I will keep it a secret. Wait until the child grows up, mature enough to understand, then you can tell him. For now, just let me be his father, just for this short time." Maya was silent, her hands clasped together. Her heart seemed to be torn in two between wariness and sympathy. After a moment, she nodded slightly but did not quite agree. "I will ask Leo. If he wants to stay here, I will stay with him. But I can't promise anything else." Jonathan's lips trembled slightly, half smiling, half choking. "Just that is enough for me." Leo had just woken up, still a little feverish, his eyes looking around blankly when Maya returned to the room. She sat down next to him, her hand gently stroking his sweaty hair. "Leo," Maya said softly, her voice dropping. "Do you like this place?" Leo blinked, was silent for a moment, then quickly smiled brightly. "I like it a lot. It's very warm here. The bed is very soft. The food is delicious. There's even a piano and lots of other games. Moreover, Uncle Jonathan is very friendly." The boy looked at her hesitantly and continued. "But it wouldn't be fun here without you." The boy approached and hugged Maya's hand. "Don't worry about me, Mom. If you want, we can go back to our house together. You know, I'm very strong." Maya's eyes were red when she heard those words. She squeezed her son's little hand tightly, her heart filled with 100 worries. Finally, Maya nodded slightly, more to herself. "We'll stay here as long as you want." Out in the hallway, Jonathan stood still, listening to every word. His eyes were dark, both relieved and pained, because he knew he had just gained another reason to live each day to the fullest. From that day on, the cold mansion suddenly changed. The sound of children's footsteps echoed throughout the hallway. Leo's clear laughter drifted through each door. Jonathan, Maya, and Leo began their days living together as a small family. In the morning, Leo was led by Jonathan to the large garden behind the house. He patiently taught him how to take care of the flower beds. Sometimes he even bent down and pretended to lose in a game of throwing balls just to see the boy laugh heartily. In the afternoon, Maya and her son sat by the piano in the living room. Jonathan often sat quietly nearby, his eyes shining with rare tenderness, when he heard the immature piano music mixed with giggles. In the evening, the three gathered around the long dining table, which was always filled with silence, but now became bustling with conversation. Leo talked about the mischievous pranks at his old school. Maya smiled gently, and Jonathan occasionally chuckled softly, a sound that seemed to no longer exist in the person who was known to be cold and serious. And in that moment, no one mentioned the illness. No one remembered the lonely days. There was only one simple thing. They were living together as a family. They did many things together like other small families. They took Leo to the amusement park together, had dinner at a restaurant together, took him to see his favorite movie together, and took him to school together. Until one day, while the three were preparing to go out, Leo suddenly stopped in the hallway. He held his chest, his face paled in an instant. "Mom?" Leo's voice was weak, his lips trembling. Maya panicked and knelt down, hugging her son. "Leo, what's wrong with you?" Jonathan immediately rushed over, his eyes truly panicked for the first time. He picked up the boy, striding quickly towards the garage. "Maya, hurry! Go to the hospital now!" On the way, the atmosphere was heavy. Maya held her son tightly in the back seat, calling his name over and over again, while Jonathan's hands gripped the steering wheel until they were white. The car sped through the night lights, the urgent siren echoing as if knocking on everyone's hearts. The mansion that had once been filled with laughter was now filled with only one thing: fear. The fear of losing the precious thing they had just found. The emergency room was brightly lit. Leo was wheeled in, the door slammed shut, leaving Maya and Jonathan outside. Maya slumped down on the couch, her hands shaking. She clenched her handkerchief tightly, her eyes glued to the lifeless door, as if she stared long enough, it would open with good news. Jonathan leaned against the wall, his hands in his pockets, but the veins on the backs of his hands stood out. The man who was usually calm in every fierce meeting could no longer hide the tension in his every breath. A moment later, the doctor came out, removing his mask. "The pain is worse this time," he said in a low voice. "We have it under control for the time being, but the boy cannot delay the surgery any longer. A heart transplant is the only option." Maya was stunned, covering her mouth, her eyes filled with tears. Jonathan took a step forward, his voice hoarse. If a suitable heart is found, how long?" The doctor shook his head and sighed. "That's the problem. Finding a compatible donor is extremely difficult." The emergency room door closed once more, leaving a cold void in both of their hearts. Maya sat with her head down, while Jonathan silently clenched his fists, a flash of determination in his eyes. The waiting room was quiet, only the sound of the clock ticking. Maya sat motionless, her eyes bewildered, her hands clenched until they were white. Jonathan sat opposite, his eyes determined. He spoke slowly, his voice low but resolute. "Maya, there's no time left. Leo needs a heart, and my heart is the only choice." Maya looked up in shock, shaking her head repeatedly, her voice choked. "No, don't say that. How can I let you trade your life for us?" Jonathan walked over, grabbed her shoulders. His deep eyes seemed to want to engrave every word into her heart. "I don't consider it a trade. I just know, since the day you and I entered this house, I understood what family is. I've never had that feeling, and now I can't lose it." Maya shed tears, tremblingly replied, "But if I leave, what will happen to Leo when he can't see me anymore?" Jonathan smiled softly, a rare, gentle smile. "Tell him that. I am always with him, in every beat of my heart, and you help him live in my place." Tears rolled down Maya's cheeks. She choked and hugged him, her whole body shaking. There was a long silence, and then she nodded, as if her heart had broken in pain but was forced to accept. Jonathan tightened his arms, closing his eyes slightly. He knew that this decision was not only to save Leo, it was the only way for his love for them to last forever. Leo quickly recovered and was discharged from the hospital. Their lives together were still peaceful, except for Leo. Everyone knew clearly that a big wave was about to hit. One day, Jonathan came to pick him up from school. The two happily walked hand in hand into the mansion while Maya was preparing dinner with the housekeeper Helen. As soon as he saw his mother, Leo immediately ran over, holding the paper in his hand high, his voice excited. "Mom, I was chosen to be a special act in the school music festival." Maya's eyes lit up in surprise. She knelt down to her son's level, took his little hands, and smiled. "Really, my son is so good. So what do you plan to perform when you get there?" "Piano," the boy exclaimed, his eyes shining. "I will let everyone know my talent was inherited from my mother, a great piano teacher." Jonathan stood in the doorway, leaning lightly against the wooden frame, silently watching the scene. In his eyes, Leo was not just a child in need of treatment, but a part of his own flesh and blood, a child he had unknowingly waited for his entire life. He took a deep breath, holding back the words he wanted to say. But in Jonathan's deep blue eyes, Maya saw he was slowly preparing for the final decision. The day of the festival arrived. The school stage was brightly lit. The bustling laughter of students and parents echoed throughout the hall. Maya sat in the front row, her hands clasped together, her heart pounding as if she were about to step onto the stage. Jonathan sat right next to her, his eyes never leaving Leo. When the boy's name was called, the whole audience applauded enthusiastically. Leo appeared in a neat white uniform, his hair a little messy from the rush, but his eyes were shining with excitement. He bowed, then sat down in front of the grand piano in the middle of the stage. His small fingers touched the keys. The first sounds rang out, still hesitant, still immature, but full of emotion. Then gradually, the music became coherent, full of life, both strong and clear, like Leo's small but resilient heart. At that moment, Maya raised her hand to cover her mouth, her eyes sparkling. All the memories of the days of teaching his son to play the piano came flooding back, along with a burning pride. Jonathan sat motionless. His broad shoulders, which had always been strong, trembled slightly. A rare tear rolled down his face, which had been accustomed to being tough. He wasn't just listening to a piece of music, he was listening to his own heartbeat resonating through those small hands. When the melody ended, the entire hall exploded in thunderous applause. Leo bowed, his cheeks flushed with happiness. He ran down the stage and hugged Maya. Jonathan walked over, bent down, and patted the boy's head, his voice low but strangely warm. "You did great, Leo." He wanted to say something else but seemed to choke up, deciding not to say anything more. Maya knew he wanted to call the boy his son. She walked over and took Leo's hand, asking him, "Leo, do you want a father?" Leo looked at his mother in confusion, while Jonathan seemed to want to stop her. "Hey, Maya, it's not necessary. Not right now." Ignoring Jonathan's dissuasion, Maya held her son's hand tightly and continued, "Answer me." Leo blinked a few times as if he was thinking very seriously about his mother's question. A moment later, the boy smiled innocently, his eyes sparkling. "Yes, Mom, who doesn't want a father? I want someone who will always be by my side, play with me, protect me like in fairy tales." Maya choked, squeezing her little hand tightly. Jonathan stood silently beside her, his face full of conflict. He turned away, trying to hide the trembling in his eyes. Leo suddenly turned to look at Jonathan, asking innocently, "Uncle Pierce, can you be my father?" The room suddenly fell silent. Jonathan was stunned, his lips pressed tightly together. He reached out to stroke Leo's hair, his voice hoarse but full of tenderness. "As long as you want it, in my heart, you are already a son." Then, Lau smiled brightly. The little boy rushed into his arms, hugging him tightly. "Dad, I finally have a father." The tall man hugged the little boy tightly in his big arms, sobbing like a child. Maya bit her lip, tears welling up, but she tried to hold them back. This was probably the last thing she could do for Jonathan, the person who gave her son a chance to live. In the cold white operating room, the surgical lights shone down on Leo's small face. Outside, Maya sat down on the chair, trembling, her hands clenched until they bled. The doctor came out, removing his mask. The surgery was successful. From now on, the boy will live with a healthy heart. Maya was stunned, tears falling down, both happy and choked up. She rushed to hug her son, whispering, "Thank goodness." Leo was still sleeping soundly after the surgery, completely unaware of what was happening. Maya choked up as she took her son back to the recovery room, but her heart was heavy. She walked slowly down the long hallway. The fluorescent lights dimmed down. Finally, she stopped in front of the half-closed door, where Jonathan was lying. In the quiet room, Jonathan was motionless. His face was calm, as if he was sleeping, but Maya knew he would never wake up again. Her steps softened, and she collapsed beside the bed. At this moment, Assistant Edward Hale slowly walked over, standing behind her. "Miss Collins." His voice was also full of fatigue, but he still tried to complete the last task that his respected boss had assigned him. "Mr. Pierce has transferred all of his assets to you." Maya was silent, her eyes still filled with tears. She turned to look at Edward, her lips trembling. "What did you say?" Edward took a deep breath, then handed over a sealed file. "Mr. Pierce signed the papers before the surgery. He wanted everything to belong to you and Leo. The company, the mansion, the charity, everything." Maya choked, her hands trembling as she received it. Tears fell down her face, not knowing whether to be happy or sad, because all the most precious things Jonathan left behind were exchanged for his life. Edward bowed his head slightly, his voice low. "This is the only choice he thinks can protect the two of you. The boy will grow up not only with a healthy heart, but also with the best conditions. He hopes that these things can help the boy become a talented musician." Maya knelt down, collapsed beside the bed, and hugged Jonathan's cold hand. She held it tightly, as if she held it a little harder, the other hand would respond. In the quiet white room, Maya silently promised, "I will raise Leo as you wish. I will tell him that his father was a strong, brave man and loved him so much that he was willing to sacrifice his life." Outside the glass door, dawn had just broken. The first light of the day shone in, covering the entire room, as if Jonathan was still watching over the mother and son, quietly and warmly. In the next room, Jonathan's heart was still beating, not in his chest, but in Leo's weak heartbeat. One life stops so that another can continue.